So since on the slide was review the market economy, individuals and countries gain through specialization of goods and services they produce, in which they have a comparative advantage, and they do so by trading with each other. So in that example of what was it, Tom and Nancy, they both had comparative advantage in different goods, and they needed those different goods, so by trading, their opportunity cost went down because they were trading. If they were gonna produce the items themselves, they still had the opportunity cost that was higher, but by trading, the opportunity cost went down, right? Making sense? Alright, and then Adam Smith in 1776 wrote The Wealth of Nations. In it, he says that trade must be organized, but it does not need to be planned or managed by a central authority. And then he said that trade is organized by using social institutions such as property rights and markets. And then on your homework, you have property rights as a definition, so you should all at least know what it's talking about. So property rights are the social arrangements that govern the ownership, use, and disposal of resources, goods, and services. And there's 3 different types of property rights. I'll give you a minute to write some of that stuff down. Okay, so the 3 types of property rights, we have real property rights, so that would include land, buildings, durable goods, such as like plant and equipment. Then we have financial property rights, which are stocks and bonds, and then also money in the bank. And intellectual property rights are tangible or intangible products of creative effort, such as books, music, computer programs, inventions of all kinds. So, who can tell me what intangible means? Aaron?
Like, you can't touch it, like.
Right. You can't actually physically hold it or touch it, but it's something that was created nonetheless. So, if you were to write a book about, I don't know, Marie, give me a topic that you would write a book about. Ballet. Then, you're creating that book in your mind, and then you're putting it out on paper. So with intellectual property rights, they're protected by copyrights and patents. If they're not protected, if property rights aren't enforced, then the incentive to specialize and produce goods with a comparative advantage is weakened. Because if Marie's writing a book about ballet and then Mac is like, oh, that's a really good book, I'm gonna put my name on it and get all the money from selling it, what motive does Marie have to write another book? She didn't profit from it, right? So if property rights aren't enforced, the incentive to specialize and produce goods with a comparative advantage is weakened, and some of the potential gains from specialization and trade are lost. So if those aren't enforced, it's making it easier for people to steal, which leads to the creators having to protect their assets or their possessions. Does that make sense? Okay. We have a small class today. Is it because of all the quizzes going on? Or is it?
Where's Paige?
Where's Paige?
Yeah.
At my class.
I never took pages on
Yeah. Alright, well I just noticed we have 4 seats, so.
Is she finishing up a test or something?
and Sierra out there.
Maybe I decided
Sarah's right
she
there.
forgot that she had.
Oh yeah, Sarah.
Oh, yeah. What?
Why? Where is everybody?
Okay. Alright, well the opportunity.
Yeah.
Alright, so this is all online, you can look it up later or you guys can talk about it. So what's a market? Straisley? What's a market?
A market is basically a place where,
You can read the slides, okay.
okay, where, basically a place where people such as buyers and sellers can either buy or sell their goods.
Right, so it's either a place where they're meeting, so say you wanted to buy shampoo, you could go to the store, get shampoo. So the market is that store, because that's where buyers and sellers can meet. But it doesn't have to be a physical place. It can also just be an arrangement or something that enables buyers and sellers to get information and do business with each other.
Kind of like the stock market maybe?
Yeah, yeah, because you're, like, everyone who's buying stock isn't physically there trying to buy and sell. There's other people who kind of represent them in a big network or conglomeration. So it's not necessarily a place, but a network of producers, sellers, and buyers. There are two types of markets. We have the goods market and the resource market. So, Pulver, what do you want to say the difference between those are?
Like, one is like goods and services. And
So
the
things that are being produced.
Yeah, and then the other one is like the resources on how those being produced.
Right, so the things we use to produce the goods
Yeah.
and services. Right, so the goods market, those goods are, those in which goods and services are bought and sold. So since we're talking about a market, it's the place where we're selling and buying goods and services. The resource market is those in which productive resources are bought and sold. So those like machines, tools, whatever it is that's helping us produce more goods and services. Households decide how much of their land, labor, and capital and entrepreneurship to sell or rent in the income's resource market. So pretty soon we're going to look at that in a flow chart. So households will receive an income in the form of either wages, rent, or interest, and profit, and then they decide how to spend income on goods, services produced by firms. So every 2 weeks I get a paycheck, and then I get to decide what am I going to use this money on. Am I going to buy a car, new clothes, new pair of shoes, or how am I going to spend this money? So if I decide to buy something, then it's going towards the goods market.
And
Look at that hell of
We figured as much. You were missed. Alright, so the slides are on the website, so you can track them. Where was it? Okay, so you get your income, you decide how to spend it. Firms decide the quantities of resources to hire, so they look at how to use the resources to produce goods and services, what goods and services to produce, and then what quantities to produce. So firms decide pretty much the how, what, and how much of goods and services. So I'm deciding what to buy, the firms are deciding what to produce in a sense. So we have the circular flows in the market economy. So we have households at the top, firms at the bottom, and the red flow is following the household. So the income that's coming into the household, and then what are they doing with it? So the outer, like orangish red, is the way households are spending. So households start here and follow down, and then for firms, if you're doing goods and services here. So the red flows is resources that go from households through the resource markets to the firms, and then the firms are producing the goods and services that go back to the households. So it's kind of like a relationship where it's going from one to the other. So it's either going as goods and services that are already produced, or in resources that are going to be goods and services. The green flows in the opposite direction, and payments are made in exchange for items. So here, households, goods and services, expenditures on goods and services go to the firms. That makes wages and rents and interest and profits go to the resource market and then back to the households. So they're kind of working together. So over here it's saying, households and firms make economic choices. Households choose the quantities of labor and land and capital, and also entrepreneurship to sell or rent to firms in exchange for wages, rent, interest, and profits. Households also choose how to spend their incomes on various types of goods and services available. Firms choose quantities of resources to hire and the quantities of various goods and services to produce. Goods markets, and resource markets coordinate these choices of households and firms. So resources and goods flow clockwise in red, and money and payments flow counterclockwise in green. Did you all follow that? Kind of, okay. So, households can, provide labor, land, capital, and entrepreneurship. So if Marie wanted to start a business, she could, with the income she's made, start something, go to the resource market, and then go to a firm to sell her product, go through the goods market, and then other people and households can buy that. So households can spend money in the goods market on goods and services, which gives firms the money, rent, interest, profits to go through the resource market and then back to the households. Okay? So markets coordinate individual decisions through price adjustments. A higher price encourages producers to offer more, so the example, this is going off an example in the book, more hamburgers for sale. At the same time, it curbs demand for them. So fewer people will buy that good when the price increases. So, I don't know, Sierra, give us a good that you would buy. Milk. Okay. So Sierra goes to the store to get a gallon of milk, and normally it's only $2.50. And all of a sudden, it's now $4. Are you gonna buy that milk? No. You may or may not, depends on how bad you want that milk. My brother's really gross, he has chocolate milk and he just chugs it out of a gallon. I'm just like, so, a higher price encourages producers to offer more of what they're producing, but at the same time, as the price increases, the demand for it decreases. So, the next chapter is about supply and demand. This is kind of just building up towards that. If supply of a good is greater than the demand, so if we have 5,000 pairs of point shoes and only 5 dancers, you pretty much could have your pick of dance shoes, right, or point shoes. So if supply is greater than the demand of that good, then more must be bought or fewer must be offered for sale. Because if there's 1,000 pairs of dance shoes, 5 dancers, you pretty much are gonna get them for like $1, because the producer of those goods wants to get rid of them. And then you, the buyer, is like, okay, I'll take 20 pairs, set for the next 2 months. So if the supply is greater than the demand, yes, no?
Yeah, pretty much.
Is that how it goes? Okay, so, if the supply of a good is greater than the demand for that good, then more must be bought or fewer offered for sale. So a fall in the price achieves this outcome. So think sale items. So if your milk was $4, but they're like, oh, we have a coupon where you can get $2 off, you have more of an incentive to buy that than if it were the $4, right? So a lower price encourages firms to produce smaller quantity and people to buy more of it. Holly?
So when like you have a coupon and you say like something is $2 off, how does the market profit from that? Because they are able to sell more, so it
Yeah, so if you
balances
think like
out?
the example of the grocery store, some items have an expiration date. So if you still have 500 items of bread that's gonna go moldy and another like week, you need to get rid of that, otherwise you're just gonna have to throw that out because nobody's gonna buy moldy bread. So the incentive, like the company can say, okay, we'll give you $2 off. They still might make a little bit of a profit because there is markup on a lot of products where they're making quite a large profit from the product. And then by doing that, they might not get as much, but they're not out all of the money they would be if all the bread went moldy, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. Homework problems, we're just gonna take a quick look and we can start reviewing. calculate Wendell's opportunity cost of an hour of tennis when he increases the time he plays tennis from 4 to 6 hours a week. So who feels brave? Anyone? Sydney? You feel brave? Alright, so we're looking, we have tennis, in hours per week, and then his grade in economics in percent points. So if he's moving from 4 hours a week to 6 hours a week, if we follow these dots up, he's going from here down to here. What's the difference there? 5 percentage points, yes. Does that make sense? So we're looking at the change. So when he's going from 4 to 6 hours, instead of getting 75% in his econ class, he moves down the curve and he's only getting 70% on his quiz or his class. Paige, the light bulb just went on. It's good. All right, we'll let you do B. So if he's going from 6 to 8 hours, shoot. We'll see how much you really get this. So if he's moving from 6 to 8 hours, so he's now here and moving to here, we're looking at these points. And what was it?
It's like a 10% difference?
Yeah. Yep. In problem, okay, so describe the relationship between the time Wendell spends playing tennis and the opportunity cost of an hour of tennis. Who wants to take a stab at this one? So we just saw that when he went from 4 to 6 hours, when he increased his tennis playing time, his grade went down. And then when he went from 6 to 8 hours, his grade went down again. So what's the relationship there? The more hours he plays tennis, Mac? Right, the lower his econ grade is gonna be. Right? Okay. So, I have some more notes on this. Let's see if I can find them.
When you say like describe the relationship, are you trying to like get us to say like, is it a positive and negative, like a direct or inverse relationship?
Not specifically, it's more just looking at if he's playing more tennis, what's happening to his econ grade. But you could provide whether it's positive or negative and the correlation. More information is not harmful. Alright, so that's number 3. So Wendell's opportunity cost of playing tennis increases as he spends more time on tennis. So the opportunity cost, again, looking at the stair steps that's happening. So if he's just moving from 4 to 6 hours a week, the opportunity cost is only 5%. But if he's moving to 8 hours a week, the opportunity cost is greater. So the more time he spends playing tennis, the bigger the opportunity cost, and the way his grade falls, right? So when Wendell increases the time he plays tennis from 4 to 6 hours, his opportunity cost is 5 percentage points. But when he increases the time he plays tennis from 6 to 8 hours, his opportunity cost is 10 percentage points. So Wendell's opportunity cost of playing tennis increases as he spends more time on tennis. Okay, did you all follow that? The next one's a lot more complicated. It won't be on the test. So we're just gonna switch over for review right now. So on the websites, Teacher Ease and Edmodo, I have posted just a basic study guide review actually. It's printed out. It's nothing fancy, but hopefully it'll help. You can either just take them and pass them around, or you can go and pass them around while I pull up those. Okay, so on the quiz, you should, well, just in general, kind of ponder these questions. Yeah.
Is this basic like, all the trouble and changes?
Right. Yes, there's not there is graph on there, but you're not gonna necessarily lose points if you
Check
don't
it.
know.
I will just check it. Is it just one page?
Okay,
It's just one page. Some of them are stapled, but some of them aren't.
oh
So-
yeah, some of them are printed wrong, so it's both, like instead of on either side, it's pages. Okay, so what is economics? Let's just do an open forum, so I'm not having to call on someone, just shout it out if you know it. Go ahead.
Science of choice.
Science
Science
of
of
choice.
choice.
Exactly, so Sydney, go ahead and expand on that.
The science of choice is basically like scarcity.
Right, and what's scarcity?
Like when all at once it's which
Our resources, yeah, there you go. Excellent. Okay. So, economics is science of choice, and that's because we face scarcity. Our wants and needs exceed the resources available to produce or to give us everything we want and need. So we wish to win over scarcity, once again, our wants exceed resources available. What is an opportunity cost? Aaron?
Yeah, like when you spend more time on something for a bigger benefit.
That's a marginal cost. It's similar, it's here.
It's the highest value alternative we give up to get something else.
Right, yeah, exactly what you said. So Renee, how about an example?
Opportunity cost, like, I don't know.
Think of two things you highly value. If you're choosing one, what's the other thing you're giving up?
Yeah, okay, so it's like with, school and music and like stuff like that. So if I would stay an extra 2 hours with school, then I would be giving up my time with music, but I
So
also
the-
practice that music.
So the opportunity cost, if you're choosing school, is, right, the 2 hours you could be spending on music. Holly, do you wanna add another example?
I was just gonna say, someone who chooses to watch like 1 hour less of TV gets more sleep.
Right, so
Your
the
opportunity
opportunity cost of, more sleep is that you're not
You're
getting to
not
watch the
watching
TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a question, because like, okay, because there's marginal benefit, which is the benefit that you're getting from that choice.
Mhm.
But then there's also the marginal cost, isn't that like, if you were to make that same, like make a choice, then you would actually be like kind of losing in it?
Yeah,
Or
so, by choosing, in your case, school over the music, the cost is that you're not getting, like, the marginal cost is that you're not getting those hours of music. So it's similar in the sense of like what the opportunity cost is, but the opportunity cost is just looking at what's most highly valued,
Okay.
whereas the marginal cost, is not necessarily the most highest valued alternative.
Alright.
So it's just whatever you're losing. Okay. So what's the difference between marginal benefit and marginal cost? Sarah?
Marginal benefit is like the benefit of making your choice, and then the marginal cost is like the additional time not spent on the other option.
Right, so Madam, what she said?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, that won't work on a quiz.
Yeah.
So, no, so the marginal benefit, so you're increasing by 1 unit, it's that positive or that plus or whatever the incentive is to choose that one. So, so, marginal benefit of, the dancing and music is that you're spending more time in school, you're increasing your skills and your knowledge, which will help in the future. But the marginal cost is that, you're not able to spend as much time on the music, so it's kind of like the downfall.
That makes sense.
How do we decide what to produce?
I had something.
Oh, yeah, okay, go ahead.
It's basically, we decide what to produce over what the majority of people want.
In a sense,
In a
so,
sense,
like,
yeah.
we're not gonna produce, something that people aren't gonna buy.
Yeah,
So just looking to see what's most highly demanded, and then producing that item.
Was there a
So
specific?
it's like,
A specific word?
Yeah.
Not,
Or just
not really.
demand?
Yeah, I mean, this is
What's
all
highest
leading
in
up
demand,
to
I guess?
the next chapter, which is supply and demand.
So it's basically what's highest in demand,
In a sense,
in a
yeah.
sense,
Yeah, because you're not gonna produce something that nobody wants.
Mhm.
What would be an example of something that's been produced that's just kind of like,
High school musical videos.
Hey, I like her students.
high school?
I
I
know.
I say that.
I know.
Alright, so silly bands, are those like
Yeah.
bracelet
Yeah, that's
things?
your-
Yeah, okay.
They were popular at one time.
They
Like,
were.
our mom.
That was
They were
the
like
trend.
playlists.
Yeah.
Alright, Holly?
I guess like do you remember like I can't I think it's called a Zoomy or something, and it was like the Windows version of an iPod, and they barely sold at me, and it was just kind of a fail.
Yeah, so why produce that?
Yeah.
If you wanted it, why get that when you can have the real thing?
Mhm.
Okay. And then what are the 4 types of resources? Yeah,
Land,
yep,
capital,
yep.
I can't remember the last two.
Yes,
Labor and, entrepreneurship?
entrepreneurship, yes. And then, what, like, you can give some examples of each of those types of resources. What about Ms. Lynn?
Labor is like the work to create a good, so like factory workers or something. Capital, there's like 3 different types of capital. There's
There
like
are.
human capital,
Uh-huh.
which is like education, and it's not really tangible. Entrepreneurship is the people who are, it's sort of like a human resource, but it's like the people who are willing to take the risks to make a product instead of just an idea. Is that 3?
I lost track.
Or
Yeah, that was 3, then you
what do I
have,
have last?
Land.
Land.
Oh, well, that's like land, like the rivers and the
Property.
rivers.
Minerals
See,
and-
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Does anyone wanna add to that? Paige? Paige, you look like you've been fizzed out today.
y'all.
Alright, we'll just mention like one thing. So with labor, it can be 2 types. It can be either, there you go, yeah. Yep. So you've used a lot of mental labor today. You've worked that brain. So you can go ahead and take a rest, brain. Do you wanna give an example of, what about like the property rights? Or, whatever, just give me an example of something, property rights.
Well, property rights is like your house is your property,
Right, and then there were 3 types of property rights, so, do you remember what they were? Right, there you go. You're ready for this, guys. Okay. So why are property rights important?
So like you have like property rights like on your house, and so like people can't trespass like into your house.
Right, because if they could, then like it's no longer yours, like everybody's just using that. The same can be said of like a field. Let's say you have this great big field and it's just lots of luscious grass, very fertile, and your neighbor has a bunch of cattle. Cattle like to eat grass, and so if they're encroaching on your nice land, they're kind of using that up, and then you can't use it for whatever you wanted to. You want to plant like a cornfield or something, right? So if property rights aren't enforced, then it leads to less incentive to like specialize in something and produce something, right?
So like in general, property rights like keep everything safe, like everything you own keeps safe.
In a sense, yeah, so with intellectual property rights, when you're creating something like music, it's so easy to download on the internet that, like, people just have really good access to it, they can steal it very easily. So, I mean, there are property rights, and if someone takes action, they could go after whoever stole the music or whatever it might be. So that's a little bit of security, but with today's technology, it's really hard to enforce, just because everyone in here has probably downloaded something without paying for it, right? Yeah, so, it's not as easily enforced,